Okay, so water is wet, space is big, and I am excited for season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy, which is coming out on Monday of this week. Right now it's Wednesday the 26th. Monday, July 1st is when season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy is coming out. I have watched a lot of Star Trek in the past couple of years, and Prodigy is definitely the one that is most in line with kind of the way I think, which is it has a real story and real character arcs with purpose, so if you pay attention, your attention is paid off by later developments. That's not to say that the more episodic series are bad or have no value. In particular, I am really enjoying Voyager. However, Voyager is gardened rather than architected, and Prodigy is the only Star Trek, as far as I know of at all, that really makes an effort to scaffold its story from the very beginning and really develop a tale that feels very well planned. There were some other issues that I had with other Star Trek shows that caused them to just not gel with my particular psyche as well. For example, I think Discovery is a very beautiful show with real artistic merit. The acting in it is incredible, the visuals are amazing, but the story is what I call meat comes from the grocery store, which is the characters have very little agency over anything that happens, or if they do, it's in a way that doesn't make sense. The plot just sort of happens to them, and they are there to comment on it. In particular, the fact that they have zero sense of actually maintaining or altering their ship just drove me up the wall. I couldn't stand the fact that they had zero ability to maintain their own ship. Nobody on the ship seemed to actually understand what the ship does. And as an engineer whose job it is to maintain a system, eventually I just ended up having to rage quit the series. I will return to it at some point, but I will not be covering it on this channel because everyone just felt so unrealistic to the type of person who would be selected to do a job. And I don't mean in the way that everybody else says about Discovery. People complain about Discovery having this issue where people do not behave the way they would expect from the military. I don't really care about that. It frustrated me that there were no engineers who knew what the warp engine does. At least to a degree that felt like it was in line with the rest of Star Trek, or at least in line with the rest of common sense. That was not a... Sorry, I really didn't mean to start this video with a rant about how much I don't like Discovery. The characters in Discovery are cool and great, I like them. Sonequa Martin Green is a true blessing to the Star Trek franchise, and if it wasn't for her, Discovery would be basically unwatchable. And she barely drags it out of the dregs of unwatchability. Anyway, Prodigy though. So the point is, Prodigy actually follows a story structure and progression that makes sense to my mind, which is interesting because I didn't actually start watching cartoons until I was in college. I never watched any children's media as a kid. Okay, not never, but I very rarely watched children's media as a kid. But my roommate in college was very into cartoons and Western animation and encouraged me to give it a try, and that was a really important hobby that we shared. This is something that I've talked to on this channel before. I really need to get her on this channel at some point. Anyway, but the one thing that we did together that really brought us together was we loved Steven Universe. In fact, that was what got me into cartoons in the first place. I hope that she doesn't mind me telling this story, but we were matched to be roommates using this roommate matching service when we were seniors in high school. And I met her during freshman orientation. She mentioned that she had really wanted to room with another girl who lived across the hall from us because they were both Steven Universe fans, but that something had happened in the administrative process that caused her to room with me, and I knew that this was because I had asked to be her roommate, and I felt that I owed it to her to give her that experience that she wanted, to live with a fellow Steven Universe fan. I had never seen a cartoon before, or I had never actually seen more than like 2 or 3 episodes of a cartoon before, and I watched all of Steven Universe, and I studied it intensely. Only the first season was out at the time, over the course of the summer, and then for the next several years we were super involved in Steven Universe. I loved it. I was not faking it or anything. I truly loved Steven Universe. We're still friends. That was 9 years ago. We went to go see Robot Dreams last week, which was really upsetting. And now we watch cartoons together. We did. But the point is, when we were watching Steven Universe, I made these bingo sheets. If you were involved in the Steven Universe fandom and you saw these really well-made bingo sheets, there's a greater than 50% chance that I made them. Every time there was a major event, new season, new Steven Bomb, which was a drop of episodes that all dropped at the same time, I would make bingo sheets and post them online on Reddit and Tumblr and a couple other places. So if you saw any of those when you were watching Steven Universe, if you watched it live, I probably made them. That was my thing. I made so many points on Reddit off of those. And so bingo sheets are just kind of how I express excitement for things. I actually have bingo sheets for my job. I have a bingo sheet on the side of my cubicle that's where I can check off different types of emails I get throughout the week, and if I hit all of them, I get bingo. So after I watched season 1 of Prodigy, I made this bingo sheet, which we're going to go over today. I've been thinking about how I'm going to cover these 20 episodes of Prodigy that are dropping at the same time, while balancing the fact that I don't want to be spoiled. I think the most important thing, and this isn't set in stone, but I think the most important thing is that I get through the series as quickly as possible, because I do not want to get spoiled about what happens. So far, I have made it through only knowing one thing that is not in the trailer, and it's extremely minor. It's a 3-letter name of a character. So, and I don't know how they're involved. I just know that 3-letter named character is in the season in some capacity. So it's very, very, very important to me that I am not spoiled and that I experience this with as little spoilage as possible. I only watched the trailer because a French friend of mine told me that it didn't actually reveal very much. So I was going to go over my bingo sheet at the beginning of the first episode of my coverage, which I'm thinking at this point, which we'll see, I'm going to do episodes 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 11 through 15, and then 16 through 20. We'll see if there's a more natural splitting point when the season comes out. But I didn't want to... I felt it would be really cheap if, after I'd seen the whole thing, I said, okay, everybody, look at my bingo sheet to see if it's right. So I figured I should do this video beforehand. So here's my bingo sheet. So we're going to go over each of these things, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my expectations. I definitely could have straightened out the word bingo, actually the word season 2 as well. Also, I'm sorry my AC is on. There's nothing I can do about it. Believe me, I would turn it off if I could, but I can't. So it's on. Okay. What do I know so far? I have read the episode titles, but I have thought about them as little as possible. I do not know the episode descriptions. I have seen the trailer. I saw it one time, and then I did not allow myself to watch it again. I saw like 2 of the screenshots that they posted, but I do not know which episodes they come from, and I listened to the interview from Aaron Waltke that was released on Trek Movie the other day. So that's everything that I know about season 2. So all of this actually comes from my reaction to the end of season 1. Some of these we almost already know are wrong, and I'll indicate where that is. Yeah. So let's start at the first one. So this one's pretty obvious: Deep Space Nine, Disco, or Discovery, Enterprise, or Lower Decks reference. I put these because I think these are the less likely references to occur. Aaron Waltke has said that he intends for this season to create this grand unified theory of all Star Trek time travel. I do not mean that. Like, if they reference the temporal Cold War, I don't really think that's a that's an Enterprise reference. Like, it has to be a specific reference to Jonathan Archer or something like that. I picked these four. I picked these four series because I feel like these are less likely to be directly referenced, especially Lower Decks, because it takes place like a year, 2 years before Prodigy. It would, if there was a Lower Decks like actual reference, it would have to be like name dropping the Cerritos or something along those lines. Not Okana appears in both of them or whatever. I did not include TOS, Voyager, or TNG because we've already gotten ample TOS and TNG references, and it's a sequel to Voyager. Janeway's like the main character. Steal the Protostar again. So let me go over here real quick. So this was the little graph I made for myself just to remind myself like how important are each of these squares. So each of these squares weighs differently, right? So the one in the middle is the free space because it weighs the most. It's in the middle of this line, this line, this line, or this line. So you can make bingo 4 ways with the free space. The next most valuable ones are the corners here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the corners here, 1, 2, 3, 4. They each are involved in 3 lines. So this is your most valuable piece. These 8 are your next most valuable, and then these gray ones, these are less valuable. So the corner ones are where you want to put the easy. So the easiest thing you want to do is the thing in the middle. Then your corners here are where you want to put your like medium tier importance predictions, and then these extra gray ones on the side, this is where you put your weird stuff. So steal the Protostar again. I feel like it's going to be an important theme of this season that the children do not necessarily feel like they should respect it. Like, just because Starfleet says something doesn't mean they're going to do it. Or maybe not all of them. I think it's going to become necessary to steal the Protostar again. Whether stealing it from, doing a heist, like an actual heist, against stealing it from the Bounticott, or stealing it back from Janeway because they find out that Janeway is trolley probleming them, and they decide that they would rather have the Protostar than her have it. What's important about this square is it's got to be like, the kids have to go to actual effort to gain the Protostar in a way they are not supposed to have it, whether allied with Chakotay or not. Someone sees their future or a version of it. I know that this all, now that we have the trailer, this almost feels like a cop-out. I guess I'll say this now. So the story, Prodigy itself is in order Prodigy itself is 3 things, and we're gonna hit this a couple of times. It's a love story, it's a time travel story, and it is a Star Trek story. And how this is gonna go down is determined by in what order it is those things. This season is a time travel story, very, very strongly, from what we know in the trailer. But as of the end of last season, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a super intense time travel story, or maybe only the first half of, say, season 2 would deal with some time travel, and we'd get some timey-wimey stuff and then move on. So someone sees their future or a version of it. What would qualify to get this square is something along the lines of, like, what would Dal's life be if he had not found the Protostar, or if he had not been taken by the Diviner? And if we see a version of him that had become a space outlaw or something, or if we see a version of his life in the future where he does or does not join Starfleet. Something like somebody has to witness a version of their own life, or the consequences of their actions in a very direct way. So, it can't just be like, a visualization of Solomon blowing up because the Civil War is worse and they destroy their planet, Xindi style, right? It's got to be like a specific character's future or alternate timeline. Neelix. I put Neelix here. I don't know how I feel about this one anymore. So I feel like Dal. I was thinking about how I would describe Prodigy, and I was thinking I would describe it as like, what if you had a show in season. I'm specifically referring to season 2. What if you had a Star Trek show where the main character is Wesley Crusher, except he's Neelix, right? He's on the ship to give his expertise about the Delta Quadrant. He's a guide. He loves Janeway. He's a little annoying. He has the mohawk and the spots, and I was so certain we were going to see Neelix this season until I've been rewatching season 1, which I have to say, like, I really enjoyed watching it the first 2 times, but the third time I'm a little bit like, okay, I remember everything that happens. It doesn't feel as thrilling on the third run in 6 months, but anyway. I just passed Asylum, and Barnes Fricks tells him, you have got to be a Talaxian. So it's been brought up a couple times that he could be Talaxian. He looks very Talaxian. And the fact that it's been brought up so many times makes me feel like it's actually less likely that we would see Neelix directly. I would say, like, in order for this square to be fulfilled, you have to either name drop Neelix directly, or Janeway has to, like, very directly say, we had a guide on our previous trip through the Delta Quadrant who was very much like you, or something like that, like some very explicit reference to Neelix. Vaunakot used genetic engineering. Okay, this is the big one. I forgot this was on here. So this is my big, like, theory for season 2 of Prodigy. Actually, this is my big theory for, like, Prodigy overall. So the central conceit of Prodigy is that the Vaunakot had a civil war because they could not agree on whether they wanted to join the Federation. To me, this indicates that the Federation asked them to give up something that was fundamental to them, and some of them were all right with it, and some of them weren't. The extreme nationalism of what we've seen from them, you know, their mantra is, there is no barrier we cannot overcome because we are Vaunakot. They believe very strongly that they are superior to everyone else, and to me, that makes me think they use genetic engineering. I don't remember if I've mentioned this in my previous videos on Prodigy. Because they would have had to, we know from Strange New Worlds, that in order to be in the Federation, they would have had to reverse genetically engineer themselves. So, like, they would have to remove their own augments, or their children would have to be de-augmented in order, you know, upon birth. Which I feel is, like, such a huge and personal thing for people that it would cause a civil war, right? To some people, that would be like saying, all right, when you have kids, you have to cut off one of their limbs so that it will be fair to the rest of the children, right? The rest of the children only have one arm, so you have to cut off a limb so that your kid is not better than them. A lot of this comes from the fact that in episode 6 of season 1, Kobayashi, we see Gwyn being born, basically, or Gwyn being created, synthesized, and there's a computer involved. The way that she is born seems to, like, really, really harm her dad. Does not seem like a natural and sustainable way for babies to be born. They could not have evolved to have babies that way, because there is so much technology involved. I think they used genetic engineering, and I think that in order for them to join the Federation, they would have had to reverse engineer themselves, which is why they got into a civil war over this topic. That's my big theory. Return of the Rev 12. Do we see the Rev 12 or not? The Rev 12 was the Diviner's ship. If it shows up, this square gets lit up. If it doesn't show up, it does not. Alright, so the next square is Dal, Gwyn, Psychic, something. I am way less certain of this square than I was at the end of season 1. So at the end of season 1, I was finishing Enterprise season 4, in which Trip and T'Pol developed the ability to communicate psychically over vast distances because she's Vulcan, and Vulcans can communicate with family members over vast space scale distances, in times of duress or just in general. And we know that Dal is at least a little bit Romulan and Vulcan, and we also know that Valnicott can communicate telepathically with their family members. I thought that we were not going to be seeing Gwyn for like a really, really, really long time in this season, or that she would be completely separated from the group. I would have put all my money on this square that they developed the ability to communicate telepathically across timelines or across vast distance or in times of duress. But I just listened to the interview with Aaron Waltke for Trek movie, and it was actually, it was pretty nice to hear that, like, basically he considers Gwyn to be almost an equal level of protagonist to Dal, and if they had left Gwyn separate from the group for the entire season, he said they would have had to spend 10 minutes in each storyline. So 10 minutes with Dal, 10 minutes with Gwyn, every single episode. He said that would have been just unworkable from a structural standpoint, and they needed to get Gwyn back with the group. However that needed to be achieved pretty much as soon as possible, so that the story was, handleable. So because of that, I am way less confident in this square. I kind of don't think that's going to happen anymore. It would be cool if it did. I am a real sucker for that kind of thing. I love that kind of stuff. I was so disappointed. I think actually the biggest disappointment I had from TNG was that Troy didn't really use her psychic abilities very much. That was something that I was really into at the time that I started watching TNG, and then all she did was say, I don't know, every single episode. So I definitely hope this comes up. I was thinking at the end of season 1 that in season 1 he basically lived with Gwyn, but he was separated from Janeway, and he wanted to be closer to Janeway, so he developed the ability to communicate psychically with Janeway. But in season 2, he basically lives with Janeway, not with her, but like he lives on the ship with her, and Gwyn is separated from them. But I'm way less confident about this one. Next, Janeway mentions coffee. This one basically gets a pass this one basically is already passed. This one was originally going to be the free space. In the season 2 trailer, Janeway is pouring a shot of espresso into either her tea or a cup of black coffee. I joked that it looks like she fired Dr. Noam and brought in the emergency medical hologram because now she has a friend as her doctor, so she can kind of push him around, and Noam isn't going to tell her she can't drink coffee anymore. The next square is Evil Augment. I kind of don't think this one's going to happen, based on some stuff that I've heard. Between seasons, I just wanted to know when season 2 was going to come out, so I joined the Prodigy Discord server, which is populated largely by the people who orchestrated, like, the plane being flown over the Netflix headquarters and stuff like that. So people who have a lot of agency in the fandom and can really make things happen, which I found to be extremely refreshing. I have spent a lot of my teenage and adult life in fandoms, and I've never been part of a group that decides to come together and get something done. Obviously, the Hive fandom will always be my home. We have been a team, and we have really come together and supported each other and become true friends. But we are kind of the last ship holding the dregs of that fandom alive, where the Prodigy Discord is more about identifying objectives, breaking those down into tasks, and then executing them, which I find to be just really, really interesting to observe, and in an extremely limited capacity be part of. I'm not on Twitter. I cannot do as much as they can, but I offer my opinion, which they better be grateful for. Kidding. But one of them, Commander Meg, or Captain Meg, she attended an AMA with Aaron Waltke in a podcast server that Aaron advertised last week, and at one point she asked a question about like the design of various augments and stuff, and he mentioned that there is no canon design for what other augments would look like in Prodigy other than Dal. So to me, that says we're not going to be getting 2 augments this season. I would say, I'm going to loophole myself on the square and say that if we see an evil version of Dal, like from a timeline where he didn't join Starfleet or something like that, I will count that square just to be nice to myself, because it's a high value square. But yeah. Or if we get an evil augment that is like some other progeny of Solemn who is like extra souped up to show like the dangers of augmentation, that would also count. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a human augment. I'm stretching this one a little bit to fit. Next, EMH discusses 7 of 9. So I think that we're kind of seeing each cast member potentially be matched up with an older crew member. So Dal is training under Janeway, Jankum and Noam. I have no idea what the hell's going on with Murph. I think that there is a lot that could be said between the emergency medical hologram and Zero. And I think part of that is the idea that Zero used to be a hologram. Zero used to be a member of a hive mind. And I think that a reference to 7 of 9 from the emergency medical hologram is probably something that would be thematically relevant. Also, I think there's a lot of parallels between Gwyn and Chakotay that we're going to explore. I did see there is a screenshot that was posted about them, with the 2 of them in the cockpit of a ship, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm really interested to see how they handle this, because I've always kind of, I hope this doesn't come across as reductive, but I've always kind of thought of the Vaunakot as like super technologically advanced versions of the blue aliens from Avatar, and a lot of people have said that they feel like Chakotay's character in Prodigy is more interesting than his character in Voyager, which I disagree with. He's had like 5 lines. Like that's just not even, like, they just don't like Chakotay. But I do think that it would be really interesting to see if they're able to pull some juicy conversation between those 2 characters. Yeah. Next, Salamander as serious topic. So we referenced the salamanders before. This one's definitely not one of my more confident ones, but I kind of want to see this. We referenced the salamanders from Threshold in season 1, but I kind of wonder if at some point this season Janeway is going to say, yeah, I do have children. I have biological children, and I had to leave them on a planet somewhere. And that was my one chance to have biological children, and that's the life of being a Starfleet captain. You don't know what's going to happen to you, and your life may not go the way you want it to in the personal department, and you may not. Okay, we're kind of beating around a point that I want to get to later, but as far as the love story, the time travel story, and the Star Trek story, I think that one of the main things we're looking at this season is prioritizing. Would Dal prioritize Gwyn or prioritize Starfleet? And between, is this a Star Trek story or a love story? The love story comes first in Dal's mind. I think that it may come up that Janeway says, if you become a Starship captain, maybe you will not be able to have a family. And that is very important to Dal. He's never said, I want to have kids, but he can't have parents. Well, he doesn't have parents. So I think it'll start to become a question of, like, what do you want your life to look like? Do you want to be this career Starfleet officer who has no personal life because you put Starfleet first? Or, would you rather explore space with your girlfriend? Maybe that doesn't work out, but you have personal connections and you have your own little family. And I want this to come back. I really want this to come back, actually. If not, whatever. Time causality shenanigans. This should almost be a green light, but not green light, but like I should almost knock this one out or give it the check mark, because we basically know this. What we've had hinted at is that this is going to be like the time travel plot line to end all time travel plot lines. What I was getting at with this one is, so we've seen Dal fixate on a loop in the holodeck, first in Kobayashi, and then in the holodeck episode, oh my gosh, Ghost in the Machine, where he wanted to do the same thing over and over again to try to find a solution, and then he eventually made it through. And Kobayashi is the establishing character moment for Dal. That is the point where they tell you, okay, yeah, this guy's not a total disaster. He has one true strength, which is he never ever gives up. In fact, they tell us that in the first episode. Zero says, you are different than everybody else because your will cannot be defeated, or however it's phrased. So when I say time causality shenanigans, I actually am specifically referring to Dal being in a loop where he tries the same thing over and over and over and over and over again in order to get through a tough problem in time instead of in the holodeck. I think that is something that is very, very foundational to his character. Like, the thing that we know about him that makes him strong is the fact that he's willing to do the exact same thing a million times in the hopes of a different result. And I think that we are going to see that in this season as an actual time loop. And I think that the phrase, I've been in this loop so many times, I see now that the only way out is chaos. I feel that is going to come back in a big way this season. Next, the word progeny. This is the free space. Yeah, what I'm hoping for. So the diviner abused the living crap out of the word my progeny when referring to Gwyn. I am hoping at some point this season Janeway calls Dal my protege, just to round that out. Just to abuse the word prodigy just a little bit harder. Anyway, so Zero has feelings for Gwyn. This was my lowest ranked. This is my lowest ranked one, and I think I should take this one out. I can't take them out. I can't change anything anymore because I've seen the trailer and stuff. But I'm going to augment this one a little bit. So I didn't think that Gwyn was really going to be in the season, so I thought it was going to be... I thought maybe Zero has feelings for Gwyn as a wrench to throw into things. I really didn't think that's where we were going. I am going to toss out, I do not think this is going to happen. I think it's going to be Majel. I think Majel has feelings for Gwyn next season. I kind of feel like that would be a little exhausting because there are a couple of little details with the way Gwyn has been handled as a love interest that I do not like. They're not big deals, but they're like medium deals or small deals, when Dal does something really, really irritating and everybody else reacts negatively, we just don't see Gwyn's reaction. They just gloss over it a little bit, and we don't really know whether she truly just isn't bothered by it because they're friends and because they care about each other, or if at some point she's just going to snap and tell him to stop whining. But it feels more like they're glossing over it because they can't portray friction between Dal and Gwyn except on a plot level, or past the point where they become good people, in quotes, past the point where they, become good actors within the story. Maybe they felt like they couldn't portray real friction between them. So in that way, Gwyn has a little bit less agency than I would like her to, because they have to portray this relationship in a certain way. And so I don't know how I would feel about Majel having feelings for Gwyn as well, but I think that it would be, and I do think it's on the table. Especially, there was one frame that I saw that was reposted somewhere where it shows Majel and Gwyn sitting on top of the protostar, kind of looking like uncomfortable around like not facing each other. Not uncomfortable in the way that like Dal and Gwyn are always touching each other in season 1, but in like the opposite way, where they are facing apart from each other on the ship, on opposite sides of the ship. So yeah, Gwyn makes a baffling decision. I'm watching Prodigy because I want to see these people make bad choices. Um, I love the Borg episode. I didn't like the Borg episode at first, but I love the Borg episode because they just, 7 minutes in, they're sacrificing children to the Borg, right? They're making bad choices. They're they're not making good choices in this show, and I don't want to see them make good choices. I do want to see them grow. I don't want to see them make the same screw-ups over and over again. I am not watching Prodigy to watch Picard make perfect choices. I'm watching Prodigy to watch the worst possible crew learn how to be better, right? A couple times during season 1, Gwyn just, stares off into the distance for a moment and then makes a bad choice. I'm looking forward to seeing that again. Friction about authority. Why is this a different color? Friction about authority. I think this one's almost a given. A couple times in season 1, we saw the kids turn off Janeway if she was saying something they disagreed with. I almost want to see one of the kids get into an argument with Vice Admiral Janeway and then say, "Computer, turn off Janeway!" and then get shoved in the brig for the next 3 years of their lives. Yeah. Goatee. I'm not going to count Murph in the trailer, but we are going to be going to the Mirror Universe in this season. And there was a point in in the first 5 minutes of episode 1, when I was watching it for the first time, before I even liked the show, where you can see some of the scars on Dal's face from a different angle, and it looks like he has a goatee. And I thought to myself, I was like, if they continue this series for a while, if we see an adult version of this guy, he's going to have a goatee. I think we have to see it, right? Especially because I don't think Dal's going to be in the next season. So we have to see it this season. We'll get to that. Avoid obvious America parallel. So this season is about trying to prevent Solemn from killing each other, from going into a civil war. So far, we have managed to avoid things like Trump XPs and, make Solemn great again, or whatever. I think that, obviously there's a place for political satire in the world, but in Star Trek, I think you want to be a little more timeless. That is not to say that we should not comment on current events, but that we should not be referencing specific current events. Children who are 12 years old, the intended audience for this, do not want to see a parody of Biden versus Trump debates on screen. It's not going to mean anything to them. But if you make a story about, the dangers of propaganda, which is a timeless topic, or the dangers of certain types of rhetoric, or the dangers of escalation in certain ways, that is something that kids can actually use as foundational, thought-provoking topics. Not, this faction is supposed to represent Alabama, right? That's not valuable for a child. And it's not, frankly, going to change any adult minds either. And I think that when they try, that's not good. Destruction of Mars. I don't think we're going to get to this season because I don't think we're getting to the augments. I think that a very big element of the story is going to continue to be people treating Dal like shit because he's an augment. And when I made this, I thought that augments destroyed Mars. It turns out it's robots, not robots, androids, I do think this could be an element in season 3 if Dal comes back in season 3, but I don't think I think we're going to get there this season because it seems like this whole season's just going to be on Solemn and we're not going to leave Solemn until next season. So, Dal cites a Starfleet regulation. I think at the end of this season that Dal is going to leave. We're getting to that square. But I do think that we have to show that he gave it a real try. That he actually is giving Starfleet a chance. And is actually, putting in the work And it's not that he didn't try, it's that he's leaving of his own volition. And part of that, I do think he's going to cite a Starfleet regulation. I think it's possible something else happens, like him citing, you know, a treaty, or, I don't know, something like that could happen that I'm going to have to probably rule whether it counts for the square, but yeah. Same location in 2 times. Alright, I'm excited for this one. So see this very cool background image? This is a piece of concept art that was released before the show that is actually just a screen cap of their model of Solemn from a different angle. And I like to paint before going to sleep, so for the past couple of months I've been working on this. I will paint it eventually. I have a light table and I'm going to shine the light through the back of it. It's going to look really cool. And what's really, really neat about working on this, I haven't been working on it for the past couple of months constantly, just like whenever I have a couple minutes here and there. What's super neat is that when I was watching the trailer for Season 2, I knew where everything was. Like, we see certain buildings and stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know where in the city that is. I am about to start chewing the wallpaper excited about the fact that I can tell where things are in this map that they have. Like, this isn't just random locations that they're drawing. They have an actual map, and you can track where things are in it. Like, I've never had the opportunity to be one of those people who froths at the mouth over starship models on the interior, because they're not usually relevant, and I've never watched one of those shows as it was airing, while I had access to the models or the drawings. But this made me understand why people go gaga over that stuff. There's a judicial building that Essentia is in the trailer, and it's this one. Look how this spire is different than all these other spires. Next, Dal leaves Rocket's new protagonist. Alright, so this is a love story, Star Trek story, and a time travel story. Not in that order. A love story, a time travel story, and a Star Trek story. At the end of Season 1, very last shot of the series, Janeway walks off and says, "Are you coming?" Kids follow her. Dal stops, looks back, and watches Gwen's shuttle leave. That's the story telling us, hey, this is the most important element going into Season 2. There are other things happening. Voyager A is cool, but the most important element on the table is the love story. If Dal had to choose between Janeway and Gwen, he's going to stand there and watch Gwen's shuttle fly off into the distance, and that's the shot that we end on. I think Dal leaves. I put Rock as the new protagonist. I actually think it's going to be Majel. Yeah, third form Murph. I'm less confident in this. Now that we've seen Murph talking, I almost want to consider Murph talking third form, but we'll see. Next, kids tell the other crew about their time on the Protostar. Pretty obvious. Probably going to be a scene between the 2 Protostar crews talking about, like, you know, here's what it's like when we had the Protostar, here's what it's like when we had the Protostar, something like that. Then clean reference to Something Filthy is the last one. I watched Crossroads this morning, and Barnes Frex talks about how he was picked up by a friendly Orion crew who treated them well. Dal's mom has a Horgon in her massive pile of crap. There's a lot of pretty filthy references in Season 1, and I am kind of banking on that. That's why I put this in the corner. I'm actually kind of considering whether I want to use profanity and stuff in my own coverage. But anyway. Yeah, so that's my bingo sheet for Prodigy Season 2. Only 4 days left until I become a different person, probably. Only 4 days left, and you should watch it because this is the only Star Trek show that has the opportunity to be saved right now from the Paramount disaster. Lower Decks is in its own mess. If Lower Decks can be saved, which I don't think it can, they have no reason to save it. They are selling so much merchandise at Barnes and Noble for Lower Decks. Why would they spend money on more seasons when people are buying figurines? But Prodigy is still Star Trek's best chance, and it has the opportunity to be saved if we watch it a whole lot in the first 2 weeks after it comes out. You should be doing your part. I'm doing my part. You do your part. See you next week.